I better find out that Kirby or somebody told Carson Beck to hit the bricks. Um, and not that I would be happy about that. I don't want to lose Carson Beck. I have a clear track record on this channel and everywhere on the internet about these players that transfer. I am not one of these people that when a player transfers away from Georgia, I immediately get all over the internet and start telling everybody how terrible he is. I've never done that. A.D. Mitchell, Jermaine Burton, I hated losing those guys. Bear Alexander I didn't want to lose Bear Alexander. Now he didn't have a great year at Southern Cal, but I liked him at Georgia on the interior of that defensive line. I'm not one of these players that come or one of these fans that comes on here and shits on a player when they transfer with the they're not any good. And I'm not doing that about Carson Beck either. Carson Beck is good, but what the fuck are you doing, son? What are you doing? Entering the transfer portal. I better find out somebody at Georgia told this guy to hit the bricks. I'm still convinced that's what happened with Jake Fromm back in 2019. Somebody at Georgia told Fromm, you're done here. You might as well go to the NFL. Back then, there was no transfer portal. Fromm went to the NFL or whatever. It was different times back then. I'm still convinced that's what happened with Fromm, though. Somebody got at Georgia said, look, you had your run here. We're going a different direction. I better find out that's what happened here. Because if Carson Beck just out of the blue decides, you know what, I changed my mind. I don't want to play in the NFL. But I'm also not going back to Georgia. Fuck Georgia, I'm entering the portal. That's going to piss me the fuck off with a guy like Carson Beck. I supported Carson Beck from the time he got to Georgia. I liked him. He played last year. I thought he played well. I was high on him in the offseason entering this year. And even during the season when he had the interception issues, I didn't give up on him. I came this fucking close to giving up on him. But, he had a terrible cast of wide receivers this year. And as bad as Georgia's offense was, let me say, without Carson Beck, what do you think Georgia's record would have been this year? A lot worse. They wouldn't have won the SEC without Carson. Look at all the come from behind wins they had. A lot of that was because of Carson Beck slinging the ball around the second halves of games. Now, that doesn't mean I don't like Gunnar Stockton either. I'm not like Team Beck against Gunnar or Team Gunnar against Carson. That's not what this is about. I'm Team Georgia. I'm for letting the best player play. And I believe that Carson Beck was the best player to play quarterback for Georgia this year. I mean, I don't know what's going on. This is going to be his sixth year. The guy at Georgia in 2020, 21, and 2022 riding the bench. Starts in 2023, plays well. Lots of hype coming into 2024, and honestly didn't live up to it. Let's just be real. Let's call it like it is. That's why he's coming back into college now. He declared for the draft and found out he probably wasn't going to get drafted till the fourth or fifth round. He said, fuck this. I can stay in college and make $4 or $5 million a year NIL. And like I said, I better find out somebody at Georgia said, we're not giving you $4 or $5 million, bud. That's what I better find out. Because if Georgia wanted him, and I don't know. I don't know if Carson Beck changed his mind, talked to Georgia. Georgia said they didn't want him. I don't know if Carson Beck changed his mind and didn't even bother to tell Georgia, just entered the... I've got no clue how this went down. I've got no idea. But I do not think Carson Beck is a bad football player. I think he's a good football player. And I think if he, depending on where he lands, I think he could put up monster numbers next year. He's got two of the best 5 passing seasons in the history of Georgia football. In the 120-year history of Georgia football, Carson Beck's got 2 of the best 5 passing seasons around. The only knock on Carson Beck I would have about his play would be the same that anybody else has. The interceptions got a little silly this year. Now, the drops are not on Carson, but the interceptions, that was a problem. I mean, he had like 2 or 3 games with multiple interceptions. He had like a 5-game stretch where he threw 9 interceptions or so. That was just bad. I don't care who you are or who you play for. 9 interceptions in 4 or 5 games is bad. And his mobility, of course, is the other thing that gets pointed out a lot when it comes to Carson Beck. Now, he's not a statue. He can move around some. He can pick up an occasional first down with his legs on 3rd and 4, something like that. But I mean, he's not Lamar Jackson. He's not Riley Leonard or Haynes King. He's not that. And so there's that knock on him too. He's kind of your old school, prototypical, traditional kind of pocket passer. And if he ends up on the right team with the right offense, he's going to put up monster fucking numbers next year. Monster fucking numbers. And maybe Georgia's not the right place for that to happen. I don't know. But for some reason, this one just rubs me the wrong way here with Carson Beck. It just rubs me the wrong way. And again, I have been supportive of players that have transferred in the past. And I'm supportive of Carson Beck's right to transfer. I'm not one of these people that thinks a player should be stuck at a school. I don't like the transfer rules necessarily and what they've kind of done to college football. But, I understand and respect a player's right to kind of choose where he wants to go to school. I get it. So that's That's one thing. Something about this just doesn't sit well with me. I don't know what, and I'm trying to remain calm here. I'm not gonna lie. This is the third time I've recorded this video. The first 2 times were just too over the top, and I had to back it up a little. And then I recorded it a second time, and I don't think I backed it up enough, lowered the temperature enough. So this is my third attempt here to talk about this, but something about this just pisses me the fuck off, Carson. I'm just going to be honest with you. Something about this just rubs me the wrong fucking way. And again, it's not because I think Gunnar Stockton is terrible or that Georgia is in some kind of trouble at the quarterback position. The reality is, I don't know. Yesterday, when I thought Carson Beck was off to the NFL and Gunnar Stockton was going to be our quarterback next year, I don't really know how to feel about that. I watched him play the Sugar Bowl like everybody else did. And honestly, I was kind of impressed with his passing ability because I wasn't expecting to see a lot of that in that game. I thought it would be a lot more of him running around, and it wasn't. I don't want to get back into a breakdown of Gunnar Stockton. But, are you asking me, like, I don't know, man. If I had to choose, who do I want to play quarterback for Georgia next year, given the choice? Do I want it to be Carson Beck again, or do I want it to be Gunnar Stockton? The reality is, I guess I don't know. I know what I can get from Carson Beck, though. I don't really know what I can get from Gunnar Stockton. Watching him play for one game is just not enough for me to know. I like the potential of Gunnar Stockton. I like the idea, just like I talked about going into the Sugar Bowl. I like the idea of Gunnar Stockton, a quarterback that can run around more, that some design QB runs, a quarterback that when we do a zone read, the defense has to actually wonder whether or not the quarterback's going to keep it, which they don't have to wonder that with Carson Beck. So I like the idea of that. How good is Gunnar Stockton going to be at executing all of that over the course of a season? I've got no idea. I've got no idea. But if you told me that I could get this past season's version of Carson Beck next year, no better, no worse, that's a pretty high fucking bar. And you're going to hear a lot of Georgia fans that are going to talk a lot of shit about Carson Beck in terms of, he's not any good. He's an interception machine. He's terrible. We hate him. He's not any good. He needs to go. That is not what I'm doing here. Carson Beck is a good quarterback with a ton of high-level college football experience. Hell, it's not a coincidence he's about to become the highest-paid transfer player in the history of college football. And believe me, that is what's about to happen. And I'm going to talk in a minute about where I think he's headed. But he's about to become the highest-paid college football transfer in history for a reason. And the reason is, and it's not because he's garbage or terrible, which is what you're going to hear from a lot of Georgia fans. You take away all of Georgia's drop passes this year, and you give Georgia just an average offensive line. Like, in other words, take the last 5 or 6 years of Georgia football and take the average offensive line play over those last 5 or 6 years. Give him that. Give him receivers that don't lead the country in drops. And give him a decent running game, which Georgia has had every year since 1892. And Georgia's offense would be pretty good next year with a Carson Beck, okay? The interceptions, they are what they are. Boy, I feel like I'm rambling here. Part of it is because, like I said, this is the third time I've recorded this video, and I'm trying to, because, God damn it. I don't think Carson Beck is bad, but something about this is bothering me. And it makes me want to say, fuck you, Carson Beck. That's what it makes me want to say. And your fucking Lamborghini, which ain't even a real Lamborghini, by the way. And I'm not, so this has got nothing to do with Carson Beck's football ability. I like him as a pocket passer. He's a good pocket passing quarterback. But fuck you and that Lamborghini. It's not even a real fucking Lamborghini. It's a station wagon, dummy. It's a fucking grocery getter. A Lamborghini with a hatchback ain't no fucking Lamborghini in my book. It might as well be a 6-cylinder automatic. It might as well be a 6-cylinder automatic Mustang. No. Get you a V8 with a manual, with a stick, with a shift. Come on, man. What are you doing? Lamborghini station wagon. Fuck that. Fuck it. It's like having a 2-wheel drive Jeep. Nobody gives a fuck about that goddamn Lamborghini station wagon, dummy. Leave it in Athens, though. Leave that in Athens on your way out of town. All right, now where's Carson Beck going? Miami seems to be getting the most traction. Obviously, they went out and got Cam Ward last year, who, honestly, A lot of similarities between Cam Ward and Carson Beck in terms of what they've done now at the end of the season. If you remember, Cam Ward declared for the NFL draft too. Then figured out he wasn't going to get drafted very high and he could get a bunch of money if he stayed in college again. So he went to Miami and had a monster fucking year. So the Miami's floating around out there as a possible landing spot for Carson Beck. Who do I think should look at Carson Beck? Alabama. And I'm not fucking trolling. Alabama's quarterback situation is a fucking disaster. And Kalen DeBoer is an offensive genius. Look at what he did with Michael Penix up at Washington versus what he was able to do this year with Jalen fucking Mildew. Carson Beck would be a massive, massive upgrade over anything in Alabama's quarterback room right now. In fact, Alabama should go all in for Carson Beck. I'm not trolling and I'm dead serious. And I think that would be a bad scenario for the rest of the SEC. Carson Beck would throw for 5,000 yards next year at Alabama for Kalen DeBoer. Carson Beck to Ryan Williams. You'd hear that so many times next year, it would make you fucking sick. So we'll see. Is Kalen DeBoer a complete fucking idiot? Maybe. Or is he going to go after Carson Beck? We'll find out. What other spots would make sense? Well, right down the road from Alabama and Auburn, they've got a disastrous quarterback situation of their own. It was one of the worst on the planet this season. And what do they do to solve it? They go out and get Jackson fucking Arnold. I don't think Carson Beck's a Hugh Freeze quarterback, though. Well, I don't think he is. But Auburn should consider it. Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin, they're losing Jackson Dart. Imagine Carson Beck throwing footballs for Lane Kiffin's offense. 5,000 yards guaranteed. Guaranteed. Florida State. Florida State needs one of everybody. They need a quarterback. They need a couple of offensive linemen, some running backs, some wide receivers, new head coach. Are there any head coaches in the portal that Florida State can get? They need all three levels of defense. Carson Beck would be a massive upgrade over anything Florida State's got in the quarterback room. Miami, obviously, with losing Cam Ward, would be a massive upgrade over anything they've got there. Alabama, Ole Miss, Auburn. Those are five schools that pop into my head. If I'm Carson Beck and if I'm those schools, I think it makes sense for both. I think it would make sense for Carson Beck to go any of those five places, and I think it would make sense for those five places to call Carson Beck. We'll see. But this doesn't sit right with me. I don't like this. Again, it's got nothing to do with Carson Beck's football ability. I think all things considered, he had a pretty good year. The interception thing is what it is. I don't know what happened there with the interceptions. It seemed to come out of the blue because it didn't happen last year. You would think if a guy's going to have an interception problem, it would be in his first year. Hell, look at Florida with DJ Lagway. That dumbass threw how many interceptions? Lagway had, 12 touchdowns and 10 interceptions this year? That's the type of shit you see out of a first-year starter. Beck didn't have that problem. His first year, he had it this year. So I don't know if this year is more of a sign of what to expect from Beck in terms of interceptions or if it was just a fluke and an anomaly. I don't know. But I look at the history of Georgia quarterbacks, definitely in my lifetime, and, Carson Beck ranks up there with some of the best. I mean, again, the numbers speak for themselves. He's at least the second best quarterback Kirby has ever had. I'm not even going to get involved in the Carson Beck versus Stetson debate in this video, but he's at least the second best quarterback Kirby's ever had. He's so much better than Jake Fromm, it's ridiculous. He's obviously better than all the other quarterbacks Kirby has had. You probably have to go back to maybe, as far as Mark Richt goes, Aaron Murray's better than Carson Beck. Matthew Stafford is better than Carson Beck. And DJ Shockley was better than Carson Beck. Carson Beck's probably better than the rest of the quarterbacks. Anyway, this bothers me. This one kind of bothers me. Carson, buddy, I better find out that Georgia kind of pushed you out the door. Look, for all I know, Georgia's got a plan for next year, and it doesn't involve Carson Beck. For all I know, Carson Beck decided to enter the draft, and from that minute on, everything Georgia has done, every transfer they've brought in, every decision they have made, every meeting they have had, has been a turn-the-page meeting where they are focused on next year and a different type of offense involving Gunnar Stockton. Because let's be real, Gunnar Stockton's not going to run a Carson Beck offense, and Carson Beck's not going to run a Gunnar Stockton offense. So I better find out at some point that that's why Carson Beck decided to transfer, is because Georgia has just kind of turned the page offensively in anticipation of Gunnar Stockton playing QB, and they don't want to go back, and Carson was left sort of in no man's land, with basically having to come back to Georgia not being the starter. I better find that out. Because I don't like this at all. I don't like this at all. Fuck your Lamborghini Urus, too. It's a fucking grocery getter. Dummy.